Far up among the Alps, in the very heart of Switzerland, are three districts, or cantons as they are called, which are known as the Forest Cantons and are famous in the world's history. About 2,000 years ago, the Romans found in these cantons a hardy race of mountaineers, who, although poor, were free men and proud of their independence. They became the friends and allies of Rome, and the cantons were for many years a part of the Roman Empire. But the people always had the right to elect their own officers and to govern themselves. When Goths and the Vandals and the Huns from beyond the Rhine and the Danube overran the Roman Empire, these three cantons were not disturbed. The land was too poor and rocky to attract men who were fighting for possession of the rich plains and valleys of Europe. And so it happened that for century after century, the mountaineers of these cantons lived on in their old, simple way, undisturbed by the rest of the world. In a canton in the valley of the Rhine lived the Habsburg family, whose leaders in time grew to be very rich and powerful. They became dukes of Austria, and some of them were elected emperors. One of the Habsburgs, Albert I, claimed that the land of the Forest Cantons belonged to him. He sent a governor and a band of soldiers to those cantons and made the people submit to his authority. In one of the Forest Cantons at this time lived a famous mountaineer named William Tell. He was tall and strong. In all Switzerland, no man had a foot so sure as his on the mountains, or a hand so skilled in the use of a bow. He was determined to resist the Austrians. Secret meetings of the mountaineers were held, and all took a solemn oath to stand by each other and fight for their freedom. But they had no arms and were simple shepherds who had never been trained as soldiers. The first thing to be done was to get arms without attracting the attention of the Austrians. It took nearly a year to secure spears, swords, and battle axes and distribute them among the mountains. Finally, this was done, and everything was ready. All were waiting for a signal to rise. The story tells us that just at this time, Gessler, the Austrian governor, who was a cruel tyrant, hung a cap on a high pole in the marketplace in the village of Altorf and forced everyone who passed to bow before it. Tell, accompanied by his little son, happened to pass through the marketplace. He refused to bow before the cap and was arrested. Gessler offered to release him if he would shoot an apple from the head of his son. The governor hated Tell and made this offer, hoping that the mountaineer's hand would tremble and that he would kill his own son. It is said that Tell shot the apple from his son's head, but that Gessler still refused to release him. That night, as Tell was being carried across the lake to prison, a storm came up. In the midst of the storm, he sprang from the boat to an overhanging rock and made his escape. It is said that he killed the tyrant. Some people do not believe this story, but the Swiss do, and if you go to Lake Lucerne someday, they will show you the very rock upon which Tell stepped when he sprang from the boat. That night, the signal fires were lighted on every mountain, and by the dawn of day, the village of Altorf was filled with hardy mountaineers, armed and ready to fight for their liberty. A battle followed, and the Austrians were defeated and driven from Altorf. This victory was followed by others. A few years later, the Duke himself came with a large army, determined to conquer the mountaineers. He had to march through a narrow pass with mountains rising abruptly on either side. The Swiss were expecting him and hid along the heights above the pass. As soon as the Austrians appeared in the pass, rocks and trunks of trees were hurled down upon them. Many were killed and wounded. Their army was defeated, and the Duke was forced to recognize the independence of the Forest Cantons. This was the beginning of the Republic of Switzerland. In time, 5 other cantons joined them in a compact for liberty. About 70 years later, the Austrians made another attempt to conquer the Patriots. They collected a splendid army and marched into the mountains. The Swiss at once armed themselves and met the Austrians at a place called Sempach. In those times, powder had not been invented, and men fought with spears, swords, and battle axes. The Austrian soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder, each grasping a long spear whose point projected far in front of him. The Swiss were armed with short swords and spears, and it was impossible for them to get to the Austrians. For a while, their cause looked hopeless, but among the ranks of the Swiss was a brave man from one of the Forest Cantons. His name was Arnold von Winkelried. As he looked upon the bristling points of the Austrian spears, he saw that his comrades had no chance to win unless an opening could be made in that line. He determined to make such an opening even at the cost of his life. Extending his arms as far as he could, he rushed toward the Austrian line and gathered within his arms as many spears as he could grasp. "Make way for liberty," he cried, then ran, with arms extended wide, as if his dearest friend to clasp. 10 spears he swept within his grasp. "Make way for liberty," he cried. Their keen points met from side to side. He bowed among them like a tree, and thus made way for liberty. Pierced through and through, Winkelried fell dead, but he had made a gap in the Austrian line, and into this gap rushed the Swiss patriots. Victory was theirs, and the cantons were free.